The Portfolio Composer, episode 189.
You're listening to the Portfolio Composer podcast with your host and coach, Garrett Hope, where he teaches you what it takes to master the business end of writing music through mindset, marketing, and business skills. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter at theportfoliocomposer.com for exclusive offers, business insights, and information not shared on the podcast. And now, for this episode of the Portfolio Composer.
If you're trying to get into the movie business, maybe it's not a good idea to go to Dorothy Chandler and find out how the symphony is doing, because you want to get into the movie business. And you'd be surprised how many people go down the wrong road. I've had people tell me all the time, gee, I'd like to get in the movies. Do you think I should be a copyist? And you think, well, copying is okay. I mean, the world needs copyists, and you can make a good living being a copyist, but do you want to be a copyist? Because if you start getting work as a copyist, you're going to be a copyist, and if you get a lot of work being a copyist, you're not going to want to give it up, you know? So I'm thinking just bite the bullet and go for the thing that you really want.
This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg. Just released, Dorico Pro 2 is a major new version, including features for musicians working in film and TV music and in jazz, rock, and pop. Steinberg have also released Dorico Elements, a new entry-level application that packs all of the essential power of Dorico Pro into a simple, streamlined package that is ideal for those getting started. Find out more later in the show. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Portfolio Composer. I am your host, your coach, your teacher, Garrett Hope, and it is my great joy to get to do this podcast on a weekly basis where I get to speak with some of the most incredible and accomplished composers, performers, authors, business leaders, and thought leaders that I can find that are out there actively in the world. And as you know, this podcast is trying to help us answer the question, what does it mean to be a composer in the 21st century? I'm very excited today to bring to you a guest I have had on my short list, my dream list of people to speak with since I first conceived of the show more than 3 years ago. This is a man I was fortunate enough to have had a composition lesson with during my graduate studies, and whose music I have always enjoyed and whose films I have always enjoyed as well. I am pleased to introduce all of you to Bruce Broughton. Welcome to the Portfolio Composer, Bruce.
Hi, thank you, Garrett.
Bruce is best known for film scores, for films such as Silverado and Tombstone, television themes like The Orville and Jag, TV miniseries, TV movies, and countless episodes of TV series such as Dallas and Quincy. He has been nominated for an Oscar, a Grammy, and 23 Emmys, having won the latter award 10 times. He has composed music for many of the Disney theme park attractions throughout the world. He also composes a lot of concert music, which is performed worldwide. Bruce, that is a huge achievement. So first, I want to thank you for putting your music out in the world and for being willing to speak with me today.
Oh, I'm happy to speak to you.
The podcast really focuses on the business end of writing music. And you have successfully navigated a Hollywood career for many decades. So if you were, this is a big question, but if you were to think back over your career, what have been some of the most important lessons that you can summarize when you're going out and teaching and speaking with composers? What do you drill it down to?
Well, I have done such thinking because I'm getting to that point now where I can look back on the career with more years and looking forward. I think the thing that I wish that I had paid more attention to at the beginning was how important personal interaction is, particularly in not even in commercial music, but in commercial music, which is always done for a specific purpose. Commercial music is fairly objective. You're writing it for other people who know pretty quickly whether you've given them what they're looking for. In film and TV, any sort of audiovisual thing, you're working for people who are not musicians, who have your music in their production, not because of the music. They're not interested in the music. They're only interested in their story. And your job as a composer is to help them tell their story. So it may be that you need to make the production more romantic or more sinister or faster or whatever, that a character has to be more beautiful or sexier or meaner or something like that. Those are not particularly musical things, but those are things that music accomplishes. Although that is fairly objective, you're working towards subjective taste. So you may find yourself working on a show and being very, very successful writing. Let's say you're writing soap operas. You're very successful on soap opera A, but you're not so successful on soap opera B. To you, they're pretty much the same kind of a show. So you're doing something that you think is appropriate for one or the other. But for the people you're working for, they're very different. So that's a way of saying what tickles one person's fancy doesn't necessarily tickle another. So you have to accumulate a wide range of musical abilities, musical techniques. But what's even more important is you have to really be aware of the way people are, the way they receive it, and whether they actually like your work or what you're doing, whether they think that you're helping their product or not. Like many composers, I went to school, I took composition at USC, and I came out and I had a degree. At that point, before graduation, there's one question that you always ask your friends: what are you going to do next year? And there's usually two answers. One is, I think I'm going to go on and get a master's or go on and get another degree. Or the other one is, well, I guess I'll teach. Even at that point, you're not too sure that you're actually going to go out and make music possible as a way to earn money for a living. In doing that, I think that even if you do decide to go out onto music commercially, you tend to think, or at least I tended to think, that the point of it was to write as well as I possibly could. And if I write really well, if I write as well as Miklos Rozsa, or I write as well as Henry Mancini or anybody else who was popular in those days, then maybe I will have the same kind of career as Miklos Rozsa or Henry Mancini or Jerry Goldsmith or fill in the blank. And actually, it doesn't work like that. It works more along the lines of introducing people to your music, introducing yourself to the people, having them actually have confidence in you, an understanding of what you're doing. You need to take partners, a line that I learned from Henry Mancini. You need to invest yourself in them and themselves in you. And this is not necessarily having anything to do with music. It has really just to do with being able to understand what the other person is talking about. When they show you a production, they show you a script, they show you a piece of film, they're not interested in your flute voicings. They're not interested in whether you're going to have 4 horns or 17 horns. They really don't care. They just want to know, can you help my picture tell the story the way I want, because I'd like to make some money off of this. After all, in commercial music, you're working in show business. You're not working in arts or aesthetics or morality, or you're working in show, making something look like or seem like something else, and you're working in business, the way to be able to make money from whatever this product is. And I think that one thing of underestimating the value of personal connections and creative partnerships was something that if I were to do it again, I would pay an awful lot more attention to.
Wow. Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, sure, of course.
So what I'm getting from that are 2 big lessons. And that is, first, you have to have the ability to read people. I mean, your overarching idea here is to focus on relationship building. But then you said some interesting things about being able to read their reactions and knowing what they really want. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Is this more about reading between the lines on what the producers and directors are asking for, or is this really about reading people's body language and subtext?
It's all that. I'll give you an example of something that I was very unsuccessful at. And this isn't to beat myself up. It's just, it was something that was a hard lesson for me. I had worked with a director on a movie already. I worked with him actually twice. The first time he was a producer, producing a film for a young director. He asked me to write the music for a film that he was directing, which we did. He was a guy who was very professional, had a lot of movies under his belt, and had worked with a lot of composers, a lot of well-known composers. He was very articulate, very bright guy, very able to do anything that he set out to do. So now we were working on the second movie. So we had a little bit of a relationship. That was good, because the second movie is always the thing that you're looking for when you're doing the first movie. You're always looking for your next job. So he said, okay, look, for this movie, you want to hear your music. I want to hear my sound effects. So I want you to do blah, 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 blah. And he just laid out the way he wanted me to play the music. And it was not in musical terms. I mean, he was not really a musician. He had played the drums at one point, but he could read an eighth note, but I don't know he could tell the difference between B flat or A flat. But even then, the things that he was telling me he wasn't telling me anything particularly musical. He was just talking in broad strokes. I want you to play a chord. I want you to play a boom, boom here. I want you to stay low, blah, 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 blah. Okay. As he was speaking to me, I made a big mistake. I translated. I said to myself, oh, he's saying this, but he means that. Because I found that with a lot of directors, because they're not musical, they don't know how to speak to composers, so they get a little nervous and they say things, and then you hope that you can catch what they really mean, even though they're using words that are obviously not helpful, like I want it to be more purpley or more green or something like that. So this guy had given me this stuff, and I took his information, and based upon the experience that I'd had working with him a couple of times before, and with full knowledge of his personality and his dramatic ability, I wrote my score. So we got to the day of recording, and now we're at 20th Century Fox, and I've got an orchestra of about 70 or 80 people out there. And I launch into my very first piece as a rehearsal. So I play the piece down, and what I did in order to satisfy his demands as I understood them, I had made a unique orchestration, a unique assembly of instruments. So I had lots of piccolos and clarinets. I didn't have oboes. I didn't have a lot of mid-range. I had a lot of top, a lot of bottom, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we did the rehearsal, and it sounded great. I thought I was a genius. I thought, wow, this is going to be really fun. I mean, this is going to be a great score. I really did this right. And then we put the picture up so we could see the music with the picture, and I was convinced I was a genius. As soon as it was over, as soon as the rehearsal was over, he was standing in front of me, and he said, this is exactly the opposite of what I wanted you to do, 180 degrees from what I wanted you to do.
Oh, no.
Now, I thought I had been highly successful. Musically, in fact, I would say musically, I was quite successful. But he said, I told you I wanted and then he told me exactly what he told me a month and a half earlier. I wanted this, I wanted blah, 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 blah. If you want to hear your music, you've got to let me hear my sound effects. And so I proceeded to go through and change everything and rework it along the lines of what he wanted. My mistake was that I couldn't tell the difference, and I didn't try to tell the difference between what a director like him would tell me, which was exactly what he meant. I mean, exactly what he meant, as opposed to another director who is struggling with contact, and for whom I would probably have to translate a little bit and get to it another way. So in this particular thing, one size doesn't fit all. You can't say that just because you're successful with director A or producer A that you're going to be successful with all of them working in the same way. You have to be really pliable. I think that a few classes in psychology probably is not a bad idea. Certainly experience with people is a very, very, very good idea. And I'll say this isn't just for films. One of the differences between films and concert music is that if they don't like your music in a film, they won't use it. They'll just take it out. They'll go hire somebody else. There's so many scores that have been tossed out for whatever reason, whether the score was really good or really bad, whatever it is. They toss them out and they immediately get another composer. Every composer can be redundant very, very quickly. In a symphony or a piano concerto or a quartet or a piece for flute and zither, if it's commissioned, chances are they're going to play it, whether they like it or whether they don't. They may get your piece up there and they'll have their 120-piece orchestra, and the conductor's thinking, this piece is junk. And the musicians may think, this is a lousy part. Why do we have to play it? But they will play it because they commissioned it and it's considered to be part of the deal. Even there, it's probably a good idea to talk to the people who are commissioning. If there's somebody who's asking you for a piece of music and they want something really specific to fulfill a certain purpose, let's say they want it to, it's a festive thing, they want to celebrate 25 years of something, or they want to celebrate, I've written pieces like this, they want to celebrate the career of somebody. And so you write a piece for a very specific purpose. It's not a film piece, it's a concert piece, and it's going to have a life beyond the one performance. But you have to listen carefully to what the people are asking you to do. I'm not saying that in this way you have to pander, or that you have to write down, or that you have to write in any way that is offensive. But I think that interpersonal relationships are important, whether you're working in film, TV, games, or the symphonic stage. I just know that is true. There are a lot of composers who are very successful because they're very successful with orchestras and artistic directors and conductors and musicians. Musicians ask them for commissions. I think it's just one of those things that goes along with being a composer.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you're right. It's not about writing down or pandering. It's about building a relationship and then helping meet their needs and desires.
Absolutely.
You said something interesting a few minutes ago where you said it's really about introducing your music and yourself to the people, meaning those who are making decisions. For better or worse, that's really marketing your music, right?
Yeah.
What have you done that's been successful in terms of marketing your music and yourself?
Well, I think whenever you get a commission, whenever you get a job, I mean, even in a film or TV, essentially, if you get a new job, that's the equivalent of a commission. Whenever you get asked back, if you get asked because somebody knows your reputation. For instance, this is a concert piece, I wrote a very popular tuba concerto. It gets played a lot on student recitals. It's perhaps 35 years old, but it gets played a lot. In fact, I heard it just the other day, and somebody told me after that somebody else was going to use it, in a week or so. So, I mean, I know it gets played a lot. Based on that, occasionally I'll get a tuba player saying to me, would you consider writing a piece for tuba? Because I really like this piece. Would you consider writing a piece, a new piece for me? That's sort of a relationship in that somebody has a relationship with your music. You may have a friend who's a tuba player or an English horn player or a flute player or something like that, and the friendship will be enough to ask you. You may have a little bit of reputation. Well, let's see. I wrote a piece a couple of years ago, and I'm thinking about this. This is going to get performed again next week. I wrote a piece, a fanfare, an opening fanfare for a program at the Hollywood Bowl for 16 horns. It was a co-commission between the LA Philharmonic and the International Horn Symposium. I don't know how in the world I would have gotten a commission for 16 horns without something like Silverado. Also, I'd written a horn sonata in there that has become somewhat popular. I don't know whether the horn sonata has done so much as Silverado has, but Silverado is a piece that horn players like to play. It starts off with a big fanfare, and the horns get to show themselves off. And I became sort of like the horn guy, the brass guy. So I think that was probably part of the reason why I was asked to do this piece. After all, it's the Hollywood Bowl. It's a commercial venue. It's for horns. Bruce knows about horns. He's written this and this and that for horns, and let's get him. I think in that way, that background, that association definitely led to something.
You're letting your music speak for you at that point.
Well, ultimately, your music always speaks for you. I tell composers that even though it's very important to make relationships, and as I say, this is something which I wish I had really known better and understood better 40 years ago. When push comes to shove, your music's speaking for you. When the music's getting performed, whether it's in a film or whether it's on a concert, whether it's one player or 50 players, wherever it is, that's you. I personally feel that a composer's personality comes out in a lot of their works. I mean, I think if you look back on older composers like Bach, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff, Wagner, Bartok, I think you can tell something about their personalities based on their music. And I've said to people, when you hear, let's say, Beethoven, Beethoven's been gone for 200 years, but when you're hearing a Beethoven symphony, you're hearing Beethoven. You're hearing not just notes that he wrote or that he thought of, you're basically hearing Beethoven. Those are metabolic choices that he made trying to put that piece together. And I think that's something that we all do as composers. So when our music is being performed, yes, we're being performed. There are bits of us that are going out to an audience, Lord knows where. In a movie, you go out to a very big audience. In a symphonic venue or a concert hall, you're going out to a smaller audience, but that may extend itself as well. So yeah, you're always presenting yourself. And for that reason, I think it's always our obligation to write as well as we can, whatever the event is, and to constantly learn, not to fall back on our comfort zones, not to fall back on what our successes have been, to provoke ourselves to do something even more interesting or better or more expressive or better defined than whatever we've done before.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm curious, though, how you would go about presenting your music and yourself, because you're selling both things, really, to someone you don't have a relationship with, or there's not, like if you were a new composer and you just landed in LA, how would you go about getting in front of people?
Well, you may have to make cold calls. I don't know. It's not a matter of art. It's a matter of sales. Mm-hmm. What it is that you have a product, you have your music, or maybe you have a performance. Maybe you're a pianist or a violinist. Like my wife is a violinist. You have this one thing that you do. Whatever it is, you have something that you want other people to hear and take part in. So you have, in a sense, a product that you want to sell. Mm-hmm. If you think about used car salesmen, whatever that is, you think of these guys who are telling you lies and they're going to sell you something that doesn't work and they're trying to take your money, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there is that. That works even in the composing world. There are some composers who I really wouldn't want to spend a lot of time with trying to get, I mean, there's all that. But forget that. What you're trying to do basically is you have this great product, your music, your performance, your voice, that you want to get out to other people. So essentially, you want to sell it. That may mean that you have to make cold calls. That may mean that you may have to find out something about the people that you're trying to reach. If you're trying to get into the movie business, maybe it's not a good idea to go to Dorothy Chandler and find out how the symphony is doing because you want to get into the movie business. And you'd be surprised how many people go down the wrong road. I've had people tell me all the time, gee, I'd like to get in the movies. Do you think I should be a copyist? And you think, well, copying is okay. I mean, the world needs copyists, and you can make a good living being a copyist, but do you want to be a copyist? Because if you start getting work as a copyist, you're going to be a copyist, and if you get a lot of work being a copyist, you're not going to want to give it up, you know? So I'm thinking just bite the bullet and go for the thing that you really want. If it's copying, if it's composing, if it's arranging, if it's performing, if it's playing, if it's recording, whatever it is, go for that, and then find out who's in it? Who is it you have to talk to? Who is it you have to meet? What are the organizations that you can go to that will get you close to people who might be able to get you closer and closer and closer to your goal? It's not rocket science. And I think part of the problem, particularly with composers, is you want to be discovered. You want to be liked. You know, your mom told you you're a little Mozart, and so you want to believe your mom. But, you know, frankly, there are a lot of little Mozarts out there, and they're all competing for the same turf as you are. And there's some way you've got to get your music to somebody who's going to hear it and ask for more.
Yeah.
The question that I get, and I always get, and I'm sure you've had it on your podcast, how do I get a job? In fact, maybe that's what we're actually talking about here. How do you get a job? And my quick off the top, well, it's not actually off the top of my head because I've thought about it a while. My quick answer is find somebody who's going to hire you.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is, really. Yep.
What I'm saying is if you need to buy a bunch of carrots because you're going to make a stew or a soup, why are you going to a sofa store, you know?
Yep.
And this is what a lot of people do the equivalent of this. If you want to get carrots, do you want organic carrots? You know, if there's a special thing you need, the more special it becomes, maybe you have to become more special and more narrowed in your focus in terms of where you're going to find the things that you're looking for. As I say, it really isn't rocket science, but it's something that evades a lot of creative people. I think a lot of people suffer needlessly when they could probably focus on what their goals are and then move in that direction.
You're right. We want our music to be liked. But more than that is that there's this thing that happens in the arts, whether you're writing commercial music or not, that says selling is bad. The pursuit of the business stuff is somehow anathema to what we want to do, so we don't learn how to sell. And what happens, to take your carrots analogy, if we're the farmers growing carrots, we need to go to where the cooks are. We need to be at the farmer's market. Instead, we go hang out with the other farmers and we all talk about our carrots. But the people that we're talking to aren't going to buy our carrots because they all have their own carrots. Instead, you have to go find the people who need what you have.
Yeah, but Gary, you're telling me, I mean, to go back just a sentence or two, you're saying that the business tells you that selling is bad.
No, not the business. I think there's this overriding sentiment that is in error, that it's a falsehood.
Okay, if you're saying it's wrong, yes, I agree with you, because the truth is we are all selling. And frankly, I mean, let's be really obvious about this. If you look at the most successful composers, whether it's in film or television or on the concert stage, you think these people don't know how to sell? I mean, you think they're not good at marketing?
Oh, absolutely.
And then, so then on the other end, we start to get really grumpy. We say, oh, well, he just knows a lot of people, or he's just a suck up, or he just, blah, blah, blah. And you're going, well, okay, but I think he sells his product really well. Do we like his product? No, we don't like his, but he's not selling to us because we're not going to exploit his product or her product. These people know how to get to the people that are going to play their music or ask for more. And it's just, look, I mean, even Beethoven knew how to sell.
Oh, yes.
Wagner knew how to sell, my Lord. Bartók wasn't so good at it. But, even he knew how to get his music in front of people. All of these guys, historically, if you look back, Gershwin, Bach or Handel, maybe Handel's a better case. No, even Bach. I mean, all these guys knew how to sell. And the ones who really knew how to sell, let's say it this way, we're not selling used cars, we're not selling lemons, and there's nothing wrong with used cars or with lemons, unless you get one. The thing about selling is you're trying to offer something of worth to people who need it
Yes.
or who want it, you know? So yeah, if you want to make another word for it, I don't know what another verb is for it, but selling is a good way. We live in the United States. The United States does a lot of selling. It's kind of the American way, but somehow we avoid it because it's dirty or it's immoral or it's blah blah blah. I said no. If you can see it as offering a product of great worth to people who need it, it's a service you're providing, and then hope that they will be able to give you some money and you'll be able to make a living.
Amen, Bruce. I agree with that 100%. In fact, I think it was Zig Ziglar who said that nothing happens without a sale.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Right.
It's like dating, right? You know, when you're on a date, you're selling. The person you're dating is selling. Now, maybe the first date will never get to the second date because you can find out already, you get enough information that this isn't going to go anywhere. This isn't something you want. The other person doesn't want, whatever it is. If you get to the second date, okay, you're a little deeper into your sale. If you get to a third date or fourth, if you get to a relationship, if you get to a partnership, if you get to a lifelong together thing, that's quite a great sale. That's quite a great sale. And I think if you think of it that way, you find that there's really necessary. I mean, if you need a new shirt, a new pair of shoes, somewhere you have to go someplace where someone is going to sell you that thing that you need. You're not going to go home saying, oh, I had to go see a salesman and, they gave me these pair of shoes. I mean, I needed a pair of shoes, but look what I had to do to go through to get this pair of shoes. It's silly. It's really, really very silly.
Yep.
Because our music is a product, and I don't think it demeans it. It's not just a product. I mean, for me, music is like a spiritual food. But I realize that people want it. They want to use it. Mm-hmm. They would like to come back to you. If they like your music, they'd like to come back to you a second time, a third time. You want people to have that third and fourth date, fifth date. You want the relationship. You want lots of relationships. I mean, as a composer or as a performer, as a musician, that's basically what we do. Well, anyway, this is a long answer to the question, how would you change it if you did it again at the beginning?
Well, this has been really fun, really interesting. I think you're so right. I coach a lot of composers on how they build their careers, and I've been steeped in academia for a really long time, and this is the mindset I see and that I'm battling. So I'm very grateful that you're laying this out in a really practical way. It's about relationship building and then selling. And you're right, our music is a product because we have this thing that can be copied and sold. We have scores. And we're also selling the service, right? Because I'm selling the opportunity to write someone a brand new piece of music. It's a little bit of both. And I've been thinking a lot about what the business of composition really is. And I'm convinced that we're really in the business of creating and then managing assets. And we need to think of each individual piece we write as an asset that can then be leveraged to produce income through score sales or licensing and performance royalties and on and on.
To add to that, that means also that you have, if you're a composer or a musician, somebody who wants to make a living doing this, you have the obligation to really learn something about the business. You need to learn something about commissions. You need to learn something about consortia. You need to learn something about royalties. Actually, you need to learn a lot about them. You need to be able to go confidently. And I'm learning this. You had Alex Shapiro on. Alex is brilliant at this. Mm-hmm. Alex is a dynamo, who has been able to put this stuff together very successfully in her career. And she's very helpful to other people. But sometimes when I talk to Alex about this, I talk to her as though I've got some sort of a problem. And she looks at me, she just laughs. She says, well, why don't you just do blah, blah, It's like, just go talk to them. That's the easy part. That's, I thought that was the hard part. But it always comes down somewhere of getting on the phone or writing a letter or an email or going to see somebody or making some sort of effort to get out of your comfort zone and do something that's going to benefit you. And getting out of your comfort zone is a really important thing. A lot of us, and I'll put myself into it, a lot of us are fairly shy. We are somewhat introverted. We fall back on ourselves into our musical lives and where we can understand ourselves internally, and it feels good in there, and we like to listen to music, and we like to rummage around in it and all that kind of stuff. And so we stay comfortable. Mm-hmm. If you stay comfortable, you're probably going to stay poor. You've got to get out and, beat the woods a little bit. You've got to go out and find people. You've got to go out and talk to people. You've got to put yourself at risk for being embarrassed or that your shyness might have to go somewhere else. You don't have to be super aggressive. You just have to meet people, and you have to push yourself out there. And if you don't, then you've got to get some sort of an agent who does everything that you want them to do, that you would do for yourself, And that kind of a person probably doesn't really exist, because the agents can do a lot of really wonderful things, and agents are really a necessary tool at a certain point. But they are, again, an agent is someone who or something that does something on behalf of something else. It's an agent. And if you really want it yourself, do it yourself.
Yeah, go get it. That's what you said earlier, is you got to really go for what you want.
Yep. And it feels so good when you've got it, too. I mean, that's the other thing. Once you've actually done it, it feels great because you are really successful. It feels really great.
Well, tell me a story about that, about something that happened early in your career that was a huge success for you.
Everybody hates cold calling, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I hate cold calling. When you call people and they don't know who you are, or you get somebody who says, can I tell them what this is regarding? And, you get all that kind of stuff, which is really off-putting. The stuff that professional salesmen deal with all the time. I remember several years ago, I was looking through the trades and came on a project that looked interesting. And there was a phone number attached. So I called and I got the director. And I started to talk to him. And fortunately, he knew who I was. We'd never worked together and we didn't have a lot of friends in common. But he said, oh, yeah, I know who you are. So I started talking about the movie. I eventually ended up getting the job. That felt great. That felt really good. I worked with him again on another job where he was in trouble. And he called me and he said, can you help me out on this one? And that felt really good. And that was done entirely by me. And I thought, oh, wow, I should be able to do this all the time. I didn't continue doing it as much as I could, as much as perhaps I should have, but having been successful at it once was a pretty heady experience.
This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is George Dimitrov, and I am a composer and an educator, a professor in Montreal at Concordia University. I started using Dorico right away because I had followed Daniel Spreadbury's blog for a while and I was expecting eagerly the software. I'm incredibly happy. I find it way more intuitive, easy, and fun. I think I work faster, a little bit faster, but especially with a lot more quality as a result. And in particular, in composition, I'm able to do certain things that I just couldn't have done ever. I really like their no-compromise approach to developing features. I mean, they're never accepting to do any hack or shortcut. So a feature either isn't there, or if it's there, it's really well thought out and done. And I think that in the end, it's something that pays us. It's a software that you just enjoy using because the things that are there are really smart and intelligent and well done. But in terms of feature, I think what I like most is the time signatures. In Dorico, the music, the information about the music is separate from the information about display, how it is displayed, which means that you can, on the fly, change from any time signature to any other time signature, and it will automatically rewrite your entire music just with a single click. And it just works, and all the ties and rhythm notation is just perfect. And it allows to do all kinds of really complex time signatures for me as a contemporary composer, irregular, additive, irrational time signatures, or even the ability to write without any time signature at all. I feel that things are more intuitive. It's more logically organized. I feel that I'm working more conceptually with the music. The way everything is really conceptual, that's what makes the program smart. From the user perspective, it makes things more logical, I feel. And in general, I feel I'm working faster with better results. I feel that really Dorico is the future, the way that they are developing it. In about a year or two, it will be way ahead of the competition. So I'm really do recommend it.
The kind folks at Dorico have set up a special web page so you can go and download a free 30-day trial copy of Dorico. So go and do that. Have been using the program and I'm absolutely in love with it. Go to dorico.com/TPC. Tell me how Disney came about.
Actually, I'm not really sure when I first started working with Disney. The first theme park thing I did was many years ago. It was a show called The Making of Me. Glenn Caron was the director. Remember that? Jeffrey Katzenberg was at Disney and shepherding this project that was going to go into Epcot. It was sort of a one-off. I'd never done a theme park thing before, and it had a little piece of animation in it. I'd never done animation before either. So I did this thing, and then several years later got a call to do another theme park thing, something that Jerry Goldsmith was supposed to have done, and his schedule got messed up, so I got the job. And it was a circle vision thing, with where you walk in and the screen goes all around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of my relationship with the theme park guys. A lot of those people I've worked with for years and years and years. Even the last one I did was the updating of Soaring, the new flying show, which is a great show based on Jerry Goldsmith's material. I'm not sure about this, but I got a call about an animated movie called The Rescuers Down Under. Well, when I was a boy, I wanted to be an animator. I didn't care about composition. I just wanted to be an animator. So I did a lot of reading when I was a boy about Walt Disney, and I was a big Walt Disney fan. And I knew how they made the movies, and I used to read everything I could possibly find on Walt Disney animation and their movies. So here I was being asked if I would write the score to one of their big animated features. And I think the reason they asked for me was because, having done Silverado, this was an adventure film. It didn't have any songs in it, and they wanted an adventure score, and what better than Silverado to ask about. And basically I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. I'll love that. I'll have your children. And they were sort of confused by it because a lot of composers don't like doing animation, but I thought it was just great. So it turned out to be a really good movie. And from that, I think I started doing a lot of other movies for Disney. I did over my career in movies, I've done an awful lot of family films, like The Boy Could Fly, Rescuers Down Under, Homeward Bound, things like that have stood me in good stead. A lot of people have grown up to these scores, and they get very mushy if they hear the theme or if they hear that I was the guy who wrote this or that.
Hey, Bruce, I'm one of those people.
Yeah, okay. Well, so there you go. And it provides, a lot of very nice warm fuzzies years later when you wonder whether your music ever went anywhere substantial. You find out that it went to a lot of people substantially.
And these theme park rides, I mean, this is the music that's on a continuous loop all day long when the park's open.
Right. In fact, some of the pieces themselves are some pieces have beginning and ends. The theme parks are different because, like the Circle Vision shows, for instance, at Epcot, they have a show called Oh Canada, which is one that I did. Oh Canada is basically a movie. It's a 15, 20-minute movie with real music cues, and you go in and you look at it, and then you leave, and the movie begins and the movie ends. At Epcot, they also have Spaceship Earth. Well, Spaceship Earth is a long ride. It's a physical ride that takes 20 minutes or so to get through. And in that, there are a whole bunch of musical pieces that are playing, and they're all on loops. They're all playing continuously, forever and ever and ever and ever. And they're geared so that if you should go from one element of the ride to another, which is right next to each other, that they can be played on top of each other. So I found a system of being able to do that so 2 or 3 pieces of music can be heard simultaneously and doesn't cause you any grief. So these rides are all interesting because they're very well figured out, particularly by the Disney people. Very well figured out. They know who their audiences are. They know how many people are going to go see it. They're very concerned about safety and about security of their guests, and they know how to sell the show. They know what it is that they're trying to present. I just find them really interesting. I mean, often I've gone to these shows and I've looked at them and I think I have no idea how to do this. And by the time I'm finished, I'm thinking, oh, that was interesting. I've never done one of those before. And also, I mean, the thing about people growing up with your movies, people growing up with theme parks, I think it's even greater.
Oh, sure.
I took my grandkids to Disneyland, and there are thousands of people, hundreds, millions, hundreds of thousands, millions of people come by and hear your music. They may not know that it's your music, but nevertheless, they're listening to it and they're being affected by it. And some people, actually listen to the music and know who you are and will find a CD of the music and enjoy it like it came from a movie. So there are a lot of benefits to it. To me, it's a lot of fun.
Sure.
I mean, the theme parks and animation, I always thought were the most fun of any of this kind of work.
How does the business relationship there work with Disney in terms of licensing? And here's why this came to my mind, because it is on a loop all day long. And we recently were down in Orlando. So we did Universal Studios and a little bit of Walt Disney World. And I mean, John Williams music is everywhere. We go to the wonderful world of Harry Potter and it's on a loop. We cross a bridge and we're in Jurassic Park. And then we go to Disneyland and now it's Star Wars. I know that he's probably negotiated a different contract, but what is that like for you?
Well, no, he probably has done nothing. I'm not saying that in a nasty way. He and I, in cases like, for instance, they used Silverado in Disneyland. I did nothing for that. They went to the publishers. Because what happens in a movie, movie and television, most often you're working as a work for hire, which means that the producer, the employer, owns the work. In fact, they are even the legal author, but they're definitely the legal owner. So they have the copyright. There are a few movies, a few TV things where I have the publishing, but I don't have the copyright. Very odd. I can make all sorts of deals for licensing, but I can't sell the work to another entity because I don't actually own the work. So in the case of Disney, when you do a movie for them, basically Disney owns everything, just as Paramount does and MGM and whoever else is a movie producer.
Right.
And if you want to use that music, you have to go to the publisher for the rights to it. Sometimes I get letters from people saying, I'd like to make an arrangement of such and such a piece from your movie. Is that okay with you? I say, yeah, sure, it's great with me. But you better call the publisher because the publisher is the one who can tell you whether it's going to happen or not. And if you're going to get a license, you're going to get a license from the publisher, not from the composer. So as I say, John Williams doesn't need to do anything. His music is so famous, it sort of earns in his sleep, you know.
But still, you're credited as the author.
Yeah.
They're not taking that away.
No, I mean, the way the law works, and it's not my favorite law, it's part of the copyright law. The way the law works is that they are the legal author. If they wanted to make a case for it, they would. But in fact, the contracts, as far as I know, either all of them or at least most of them, allow you the right to be able to receive royalties on your performances and you to become the author of, well, not even author of record. They will call you the author. You know, you're the writer, you're the composer of the music, whatever. But if they wanted to take it, yeah, legally they have the right to take everything. On a motion picture, theme park things as well, you get paid up front, you get a fee up front, and then based upon the performance of your music, whether it's on television or whether it's in theaters, not in this country, but abroad, on radio, on live stage performances, in theme parks, then you're paid a royalty on the performance. You're not paid for operas because that's a grand right. You're paid for small performance rights, which are television, radio, symphonic concert performances, theme parks, and all that kind of stuff. So you'll earn money at two ends. You'll earn it at the beginning and you'll earn it at the end. The way things are presently with streaming, a lot of things are going on streaming, and composers are finding that the royalty stream is significantly less than it is for terrestrial television. You'll do better on ABC or CBS or NBC than you will do on Netflix. But that's changing. That's all beginning to change. It's, again, one of the reasons why, if you're a composer, you have to understand something about the business and learn about how royalties are made so you can get an idea of how much you're going to be able to earn.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending business, believe me.
I'm sure. And you've been really involved with ASCAP and a lot of the organizations in California, right?
Yeah, I'm on the board of ASCAP. That's not how I know Alex, but Alex Shapiro also is on the board of ASCAP. Alex is the representative for concert and symphonic music. I'm one of the other writer members. My area of expertise basically is in film and television, but we have other writers like Paul Williams and other guys who are, you know, songwriters, pop writers, and we cover sort of the whole gamut of music making. We have people who are, you know, knowledgeable about country, who are knowledgeable about pop music and, you know, this and that. So we try to cover it as much as we possibly can.
I'm sure. Bruce, what is one thing that you've always wanted to discuss, but no one ever asks you?
Well, I wasn't prepared to think about that.
Well, let me give you an idea. We'll have someone else answer this question. A band composer, Jonathan Newman, who's doing incredible work, and he teaches at Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. And when I asked him this question, he thought about it for a while, and he said, no one ever asks me what I like to play when I sit at the piano. And even though he's writing this real contemporary music, he just has this love for show tunes, and that's just what he plays. Oh, okay. And so he was starting to point out all these little snippets, like, well, if you listen to this piece, you're going to hear this, you know, Tin Pan Alley tune that I was playing at the piano at that time. So it could be something completely obscure, but I just wanted to put that in front of you.
Gosh, I really don't know. I mean, I'm a pianist as well. I don't play as well as I used to or as often. When I sit down to play the piano, I tend to play the old, I mean, I was classically trained, so I will end up playing Rachmaninoff or Chopin or Bach or something like that. And I like to use it as a time to see how the other guys wrote. I spend a lot of time listening to music. I get asked questions like, what's your favorite composer? What's your favorite piece? I don't have either. If you ask me who's my least favorite composer, I could probably answer that, but I won't. What would I like to be asked? I'm really not sure.
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't know. You know, I feel, this is funny. I feel like I'm in the middle of my life. You know, I feel like I said to my wife the other day, I had a performance last week, the 3 concerts, and they went really well. And it got me, all worked up. And I thought, this is one of the things I'd like to do is I would like to be able to keep writing and get as many performances as I possibly can, to get around as much as I possibly can, to be known as a concert writer. I mean, the movie stuff, if that continues, that's fine, but I don't do an awful lot of that anymore. So the concert thing, I'd like to get better extended on that. And the other thing I like to do, because I've done a lot of it, is I like to teach. Not so much to be in a classroom every week, but I like to develop programs and ways of people to learn things, to be able to tell them the truth, to be able to answer questions that are generally honest questions. The questions often are very similar, like how do I do such and such or so and so. And if I can keep that going for the next several years, I think I'll be a happy camper. I really like writing music. I'm a sap for music. I mean, I really could not go very long without it. I listen to it continuously. I listen to whatever I can. I have my favorites, and there's some music I know better than others. There's some styles I know better than others. I like being challenged, and sometimes I find music very, very, very difficult to do, very hard to write, very unsatisfying, and then other times I find it to be the most wonderful thing in the world. I'm working on a piece right now, a piece for trombone and band for Joe Alessi in the New York Phil. And so I'm in the orchestration stage. And I said to my wife a couple of hours ago, I said, the interesting thing about orchestration is that if you sit there long enough, you'll find a better way of doing it. And I find it to me almost like religion. You sit there and all of a sudden something opens up and you go, oh yeah, I can do this. I can't tell you how many times I've sat there with a score looking at it and thinking there is no way to do this. Right. And sitting there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe a day, and then coming back another time and say, well, if I just move that, then and then it'd open up into something completely. I find the whole process incredible.
I can't remember who said it, but there's this quote where the author was rambling on about being an author, and he said, I don't really like the process of writing, but I like having written. And sometimes that's how I feel about composition.
That was actually, I think that's Dorothy Parker.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I don't like writing, I like having writ. Yeah, I think a lot of people are like that. I find writing music hard. I mean, sometimes I enjoy it. Mostly I just find it hard work. And the thing is, no matter how successful the thing is that you just finished, if I sit down to write a new piece, very often I think I must have had a stroke, because I think I've forgotten entirely how to do this. Whatever that music writing ability is in my brain, I think it's gone. I don't think I'll ever be able to do this again, And then you just stay there and you just stay there and just stay there. A friend of mine, Chris Boardman, who's an arranger, composer, and teaches in Florida, said to me one time, his mentor said to him, if you sit there long enough, it'll get done. And I thought, what a stupid thing to say. But you know what? I've thought about that over and over and over. It's true. If you sit there long enough, it'll eventually get done. So you just have to sit there and write, sit there and think, sit there and get anxious, sit there and try to figure out how to move the notes around until it finally works your way, until it's finished. And then start over again. Do it over again. See if you can do it better.
Yeah. You said something to me when I had the opportunity to have a composition lesson with you. And that we're talking, 11 or 12 years ago at this point. And you were in the process of writing this particular piece, and I can't remember where it was, but you said, I'm figuring it out. I'm working it out. It's a problem to be solved. It's a puzzle. And it was all in the context of I'm learning to write for this instrument. And it's not like you don't know how to write for that instrument, right? You've been writing successfully for decades.
Yeah, but you can always do it better,
Right. And that comment has stuck with me, Bruce, because this is work. Showing up every day and writing, and music is a puzzle, and finding the right combination of all the elements. So I want to thank you for that. It's stuck with me for years.
It's a puzzle, but it's also a mystery.
Yeah.
There are times it can make you feel really stupid because you're sitting there looking for something, but you don't even know really quite what it is you're looking for, but you think you'll know it when you find it. Mm-hmm. It's a stupid way of living your life, But the truth is, that's what you do. You sit there in a fog, at least I do. Sit there in the fog and you search around for something solid, and then you find it, and then you look at it and think, well, this isn't exactly what I was looking for. I need to shape it. And you'll sit there looking for other stuff, and then maybe I can put these things together, and together they'll make sense, and maybe I need something else. And then, you're always in the fog, and eventually the fog clears and you've done something. And then you have to be sure. This is a little rude, but I've said to people that the trouble with creativity is that, when you're a small child in toilet training, sometimes you think you've been creative, but you've just made a poo-poo. And there are some times when we think we've done something really great, but in fact, we just made a poo-poo. It's kind of hard to tell when you've done something really wonderful and when you've done something which is just very ordinary.
Yeah.
When you look at other people, unfortunately, you can tell when they've done something great because that stuff resonates with you. And that's what you want to do for everybody else, but it's hard to do it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, I want to thank you for your time today and for speaking with me and allowing me to pick your brain on some of these issues. I value the music you've put out in the world and your contribution to our art. And thank you for being an advocate for composers with your work through the ASCAP board. I appreciate and value you and what you've done.
Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate that. It's been enjoyable talking to you.
This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg. The brand new Dorico Pro 2 introduces best-in-class support for composing to picture. Using the same powerful new video engine found in Cubase and Nuendo, attach a video to your project. Play it back via the dedicated video window and see thumbnails in play mode. Add markers at crucial points in the action and display them in the score. Use the new tempo automation controls in play mode to line markers up with beats, or find a tempo for the whole cue. New tools in play mode allow you to edit the tempo and dynamics of your music graphically, applying default curves to provide more nuance to gradual tempo and dynamic changes. Add lanes for MIDI controllers and draw data to bring your music to life. With Dorico 2's new automation tools, you can add realism and nuance to the virtual performance of your music, taking it one step closer to the stage or concert hall without leaving your music notation software. And that's only the beginning. Check out the brand new Dorico website at dorico.com/TPC to find out more.